I called the guy back and I said, I'll tell you what, I have no problem giving you back your IP, but you have to agree to stop using mine. He said, I don't understand. I said, you're not going to understand because you're on the legal side. But I said, would you help me? Because I'm sincere about giving it back. But could you help me get to the head of marketing at Kingfisher Investments? We need to have a conversation, and I'd love for you to participate. He said, sure. So he arranged the call. And so we got on the phone. That guy's real arrogant. He thinks I'm a smuck, because I'm an annuity guy. And he said, what can I do to help you? He says, I don't understand what's so hard about this. Give us our URLs. I said, no problem. I said, when you stop using my IP, I'll stop using your IP. And he goes, what do you mean your IP? What are we doing? I said, well, let me ask you a question, sir. I said, how many annuities are there? How many different types? He goes, what do you mean? There's only annuity. I said, okay. Well, let me ask you this question. How are fees on annuities? Oh, they're all terrible. They're great. I said, what if I told you there are annuities that have no fees at all? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, that's precisely why we're having this conversation. I said, how are annuities taxed? What do you mean how they're taxed? They all ordinary income tax. I said, what if you're wrong? He said, I don't understand. I said, do you know there's some annuities that have no tax at all? Do you know anything about tax exclusion where they're not even taxed at the same level? The IRS gives a completely different tax status to the payout of certain types of annuities. I said, so if you already misconceive so many of these facts about the 42 types of annuities exist, and you simply broadcast that word as though it broadly represents all the products, as though you can diminish and demonize all the annuities exist, and you don't even know yourself what the differences are. I said, that's the difference between a hammer and a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. How would you ever know what tool to grab when there's a job at hand if you don't even know what the tools do? And I said, he says, what? So we finally got into a conversation about the difference between deferred annuities and income annuities. And so I waited a few weeks, and finally I got a response back, and this was a result. They said, we are going to put a full-page ad in the USA Today on this particular Sunday, and when we put that ad out there, we're going to put in small italicized print, we're going to put, we're not talking about income annuities.
Wow.
And if you go to their annuity brochure, I've ordered it now, they actually advocate for income annuities as the only annuities they support.
So you went from the company that literally uses annuities to market why you should work with them on how they're terrible, horrible, and in their own writing, I'm taking your word for this, that they even acknowledge and potentially would support certain type of annuities.
Yes, that's correct. Just because I had the courage and the boldness to actually have a conversation with authenticity with that marketing person at Fisher Investments. They completely, by the way, I don't even know if AnnuityBunk.com even exists today. They still demonize the variable annuity income rider. We're never going to change that. There are certain calculations and scenarios about that. There's some of those situations I wouldn't argue with their math, right?
Yeah.
But there are some situations they can't proceed because they're so sold out to their assets under management arrangements. But they seceded. Wow. They conceded. And we made a lot of progress in the industry with them just because we took the time.
How many people actually give a call after they receive a letter? I didn't receive a letter from Fisher. I had David McKnight on the show, and we got a lovely email from their attorney saying that they wanted me to change some things, edit some things out. And so I didn't want to fight, and I just went along with it. I know probably I'm going to get a lot of people that are like booing that, but I was just like, it's not worth, like, they got a lot more money than me. I don't want to rock the boat. But it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And here you're getting a legal letter and then saying, let me talk to you. And I admire that greatly. And I think that's awesome that you're going to the people that maybe have the most animosity towards something and getting them to change some things. I think I admire that. If you're a high-earning professional, entrepreneur, or someone who wants more control of your money, we offer something called a clarity call. It's a one-on-one conversation where we learn more about your situation and walk you through how integrating whole life insurance could help better your financial situation. It's no pressure or fluff, just real clarity on whether this strategy is right for you. Click the link in the description or tag comment below, and we'll walk you through exactly how we can help you.
Well, think about it. How is that going to get a conversation going? I mean, I feel like God reached down in my brain one day and gave me this crazy idea about setting up URLs to force them to talk to me.
Great.
I wouldn't have thought about that in my own wisdom and knowledge. Only the power of the Holy Spirit
I love that.
would speak to me
I love that.
in such a way.
The same thing happens when people like Dave Ramsey will say things about life insurance. They're using an example of life insurance that I don't even disagree with. Like, yeah, everything that you said, I would be in your camp, Dave, on like if that's what's being sold, the way that a lot of people are selling. I'm not pro life insurance in that scenario. Like, I get it. And so, but what I find is it's frustrating because then they almost make it sound like that's everything. That's every product. That's how everything's being sold. And I think what needs to happen is instead of just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, we need to acknowledge, like, I actually admire Dave Ramsey a lot from what he stands for, his consistency, the values that he has. And so at the same breath, like I admire him greatly. And I can also disagree. That doesn't make him a bad person. That doesn't make me a scam artist. That says we might have some values differences. I admire your stance. And I actually believe if Dave and I were behind the scenes talking, we would agree on a lot more things than we would disagree.